Good evening, everyone. I'm Shakayla Alvarenga, and thank you for joining us here at the Mob Museum. And of course, welcome to the Chinatown Underworld, Inside Stories of Asian Gangs in New York City. It is certainly a pleasure to welcome both of our panelists to the museum tonight. Just very briefly, we'll start with Peter Ching, his journey from an orphaned immigrant to leader of the Ghost Shadows, one of New York's most powerful Chinese gangs, is a story rarely told firsthand. His code of silence, maintained for decades, has now been broken. His memoir, In the Ghost Shadows, offers an unprecedented glimpse into the inner workings of Asian organized crime in America. And sitting next to him is Mike Moy, whose extraordinary transformation from the Fuk Ching gang member to a dedicated NYPD detective reads like fiction, but is all too real. Michael patrolled the very streets he once terrorized, living a double life while hiding his past from both worlds. And together, their remarkable stories certainly demonstrate how these two men chose radically different paths to escape their violent pasts. And interestingly enough, this is the first time that either of them are speaking in front of a public audience. So,
very nervous.
So let's first start with an overview from both Ching and Moy, and then we'll delve into the Q&A session. We'll also save some time at the end for any audience questions as well. And then we're going to do a book signing in the back with Peter Ching. So let's get started. All right, Michael, let's start with you.
Thank you, Shakayla, for having me here. And I'd like to thank the audience for showing up and listening to my story. This is the first time I ever spoke to a live audience like this, so I'm not used to something like this. Usually when I do a podcast, it's usually like one-on-one. I'm not the type of person who likes to be in the limelight. The reason why I came out telling my story is because I feel that it's very important to preserve this piece of Asian American history and what Chinatown was all about back in those days, especially from the 70s to the mid-90s when the Asian gangs were prevalent during those times, and it had a big impact in the community, the residents of the community. And there's a lot of misinformation out there in the news articles that I spotted, and over the years I felt like maybe someone would come out and talk about it, but nobody ever did. And that's why I feel that I needed to come out and talk about it because nobody else ever came out, and everyone who wrote about us, the gangs, were non-Asians, reporters, law enforcement, and they didn't get the story accurate. There's a lot of mistakes, which I pointed out in my book, Bad to Blue, and also in Peter Ching's book, In the Ghost Shadows. So that's why I felt like I needed to come out and talk about it, and that's why I'm here. And that's what we're doing today.
Thank you, Michael. And we have some photos to share, so we can
okay. So I
just give some background there.
A little bit about myself. I was born and raised in New York, and I grew up in Chinatown. And most of the time I spent in the sweatshop. There weren't too many opportunities, back then for Asian American. So when my grandmother and my parents came to this country, they either worked, and my uncles, they either worked as waiters, worked in a laundromat, or in a sweatshop. And that's me and my grandmother. I would join her, and I would spend most of the day in the sweatshop. And I remember her, working very hard in the sweatshop, and I would be there playing with the spools of thread and just, spending my time in the sweatshop. And, sometimes I would sit behind her, wrap my arms around her, behind her in the chair, and I would fall asleep there. So that's what I remember most growing up as a kid in Chinatown. We lived 11 to the apartment, and it was to me it was fun because there's so many people, in one apartment with my uncles, my father, my parents, my siblings. I had a good time. And that's me. When I first joined the gang, I remember that was one of the outfits I picked up. Trying to match the other gang members in my crew. I was 16 years old at the time. Yeah. The reason why I joined the gang was because of bullying. Because my parents moved me out of Chinatown to actually get me away from the gangs. And meanwhile, the gangs were doing recruitment in Brooklyn. I moved to Brooklyn, and they were doing recruiting there, and I got caught up in the gangs. Why? Is because of bullying, which I talk about in my book. I mean, it's something that's not easy for me to talk about, but it's more easier for me to write about. And then that's why I joined the gang. I'm not here to like glamorize the life or anything. I'm just telling the facts on what we did, what happened. So I mean, some people, when I read some of the comments, they're saying that why are you glamorizing the life? To me, I'm just telling what we did, how we felt during that time, and I don't think I'm here to glamorize the life because that life is behind me, and it's the past. And as you get older, you realize the mistakes you've made, and you grow with change. And for me, I always say that you need to realize what you're doing wrong in order to make that change. Otherwise, if you don't realize it, you're not going to be able to make that change. So that was me in probably sometime around 1994. Even during that time, right before I joined the police department, in 1995, it was like during the tail end of my activities with the gang. I was into gun running, dealing with counterfeit money, credit card fraud. During my early days, it was when I was a teenager, 16 years old, street robberies and extortion. So all kinds of questions. So I've seen it firsthand on what the gang does. So and nobody ever spoke about what the Asian gangs in Chinatown did. And there's a difference between the Chinatown gangs, the Tongs, and the Triads. A lot of people think it's the same. Sometimes they call us like the Chinese mob, the Chinese mafia. No. We're just a local street gang. And the Triad is more based international. You have the 14K, the Sun Yuan, different triads all over the world, but mostly they're based either in Taiwan or Hong Kong. But with the local street gangs like the Ghost Shadows, the Fuk Ching, the White Tigers, it's the local street gangs in the neighborhood. And the Tongs are more like the intermediary between the Triads and us. And the Tongs are basically our connection to, because the Tongs, they deal with the politics. It's like a association of the elders in the community, the respectable members in the community, the store owners. They get together, they have their connection to the politicians, the police department, and the Tongs need us as enforcers. And they're our connection to the politicians and the police department and the Triads. So they're the one that build relationships with the community, but they need us as the enforcer. So that's what we were about back then. That's me when I joined the police department back in 1995. I eventually served 26 years with the police department. I did 9 years patrolling the streets of Chinatown in uniform, and I did 17 years as a detective. Yeah. And I retired in 2021, in July. That was the early day. The guy in the middle, he was my Dailo, so to speak. He had the rank of Daima in the gang. I'll get into the hierarchy of the gang later on, or it's in my book, Bad to Blue. And the other guy right next to him, I'm the one with the glasses, and the other guy next to him, he was one of the original members. And we started out as 3 members, the early 3 members in the early faction of the Fuk Ching gang. And then eventually I recruited another guy, and the guy in the middle also recruited. So we started with 5 members in the core 5, and eventually just blew up to about 30 members. Pretty quick. And then we just took over like parts of Brooklyn. And then we had another crew in Chinatown as well. I guess I'll pass it over to Peter.
Yep.
Jesus.
Yeah.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for having you guys here. But I'm not a gangster at heart. I'm so nervous right now. I'm very, very nervous. I was telling him in the back, I have never done this like this. Never in my life. I mean, never held a mic in front of me before. So, just excuse if I say something wrong, just excuse me, please, all right? So I'm nervous the way it is now. So, okay, I'm gonna show you the first clip. This is when I was young, when I was in the school days. And right behind that building, right next to me, that's where I live. That's in, they call Lower East Side, New York. And that's where I got chased out from by my father. And when I was like 13 years old. And when I ran out of the front door, he was coming after me with a knife. So I ran out the front door. I didn't know how to turn left or right. So where could I go? I never been nowhere. I was only 13 years old. All I did in my life was, when I came, I never seen a building like this high before when I was living back home. So came here, I saw a building this tall, and that day that my father chased me out, and I left the apartment, and I was on my own, and I didn't have a friend. I only had 2 friends actually in the school, about my age, and I went to one of my friends, and my friend says, Pete, you know, I cannot even take you home, even I want to. I know he wants to. He said, if I do, my father and mother would throw me out with you at the same time, you know. So I said, I understand. So, but you know what? I only had $5 to buy with me, right? Because I was helping my mother in the factory, stuff like that. And my mother's the only person that put monies on the table. And while I have like 5 other sisters. And she took care of the whole family, not my father. I wasn't the only one in the family who ran away from home. If I was the you could say I'm a black sheep. My sister, the older sister, second sister, third sister, fourth sister, they all left at different times, besides me. So how can you say it was me? You know, it was me. You know, I could understand that, but you know, so. And so I went on, and I didn't have a choice back then. I went to look for a job, and nobody wanted to give me a job. The last thing I went to, that was maybe the 5th job I went and looked for, was a newspaper. I said, boss, let me, you know, like, I'll go to the neighbor and you know, hand out those newspaper for you guys. He said, you only weigh 90, look at me, you only weigh 90 pounds, get out of here. He took me like this by the collar and threw me out. I didn't have no choice, so then I created an enemy. Back then was the most dominant crew in New York was the Black Eagle and the White Eagle. So, but at the end of the day, that we took over the territory, but that's later on. But this is one of my school days, right? Well, this is where I became a gangster. I'm ashamed to say that, you know, I'm not hard in it. You know, I got to do what I had to do back then. So this is when I was in federal prison. That's in Virginia, Petersburg. So when I first got in there, they put me in Indiana maximum security terror hut. There's only 5 federal prisons back then that is to house the maximum security. One is in Indiana, that's where I was. And the other rest was one of each state, California, Atlanta, but I wound up in Indiana. I have 25 co-defendants back then, and this was like about 5 of them fugitives, and to this day they're still a fugitive. Yeah, so I knew the RICO was coming, but when they arrested me, seriously, when they arrested me, they say. Back then, I didn't know how to speak English because I'm going to tell you guys, I wasn't educated in English. I learned all my English in prison, or else I wasn't able to communicate with you guys today. And I don't know how to read Chinese, even today, limited. I'm very limited. I never went to school, at Chinese school. So I only could talk, like, to you know, say. So 2 of my co-defendants in the case, actually, they are my translator. One is in English when I need him to see the lawyer, And this one is a Chinese interpreter. They both didn't do nothing. They got 7 years. They both got 7 years because they translate for me. That's all.
Wow.
So, I mean, I feel bad for them. But anyway, those are old days, you know. But the truth, my book wouldn't come out, wasn't Mike Moy. When I was in federal prison, like, they gave me an offer. It wasn't Kingston. That's James. Yeah, that's a publisher today for me. But back then, it wasn't Kingston. You know a guy named Christopher Rackencourt. He was with me in federal prison, and his wife is playmate of the year of Pierce, and he married Miss France. When he went back, he's a Frenchman. But anyway, he introduced me a writer. They looked at my story, and they said they came and see me. They said, Pete, well, I don't need you to tell me what happened when you in the United States. Just tell me when you back home, like back in Hong Kong, while you was before you came to the United States. I came to the United States when I was 8 years old. During that 8 years, I have never seen a car in my neighborhood. That's a dirt poor place. All I see is car walking by me. There's no car, no automobile, nothing like that. Yeah, it was the countryside. So just imagine, I'm so naive, you know, I haven't seen the world. So, but anyway, then they offered me, so he introduced me to the writer and things like that. They offered me 3 times before I came home. Then I said, no, I can't give you my story because it's too painful. Because when it started, how it started when I was young, and it's just too painful when they mentioned to my mother. I actually dedicated this book to my mother, right? So then after I turned them down 3 times, the last time, I'm almost getting released. About 6 months, they hired an offer. I said, no, I'm not gonna do it. So forgot about it. 17 years passed by, Michael Moy found one of my, was Kenny, right? And he went through Kenny and went through me, and I turned him down at least 8 times during that 8 months. Yeah, Kenny came to me, said, Uncle, that's not you. Said, I grew up with this guy, even though he's a cop, but you know, he's not what you think he is, right? I said, okay, and then, but during that 8 times, I said, no, I refuse to meet him, right? And then he says, no, the last time, knowing Kenny, if you know Kenny, he would not stop. So I said, okay, all right, Kenny, just to satisfy you, I'm gonna do this for you. I'm gonna meet him, tell him I'm gonna give him 5 minutes. That's it. If in 5 minutes he cannot convince me, that's it, right? So during that 5 minutes, we met in the parking lot. That's the first time I met him. We shook hands. And the last thing he said to me, that's what it caught me in my heart. He said, Pete, and one day, when we're not gonna be here forever. 30 years from now, 50, we're not here no more. So if one person pick up the book and read your book and could help only one person, that's more than enough. I said, okay, all right. So as more I listened to him talking, he said, no, I don't want nothing out of this. I don't, what? You don't want nothing? I mean, how could it be like you just helping me with this? He said, yeah, I'm gonna help you with this. I don't want nothing with this. Okay. I was thinking about, ain't that there's such a stupid person like that? You know, I was thinking, right? You don't want nothing out of him. No, I don't want nothing out. I'm gonna give you the writer, I'm gonna give you this, I'm gonna give you all my connection, this, that. It's just, I want your story to be told. Because knowing that I every time he asked me something, I told him, and later on, I said, this incident I knew about, I said, I couldn't find it. Because back then, I don't know how to read English. They publish in the newspaper, I don't know how to read them, I never read them. So he take it all out, and he knew that I was telling the truth, the facts. So he says, no, I want. He is the type of guy very fanatic about the history of the Chinese gang. I was thinking to myself, 50 years from now, I'll be dead. Who cares, you know? But he don't. You know, he put it in hard that he wants this to preserve. So that's how he came along. But this is where I was in federal prison. You see that tennis ball? They have tennis. Back then, when I was playing tennis on the street, you got to pay money, you know? Yo, this is a high-end sport, besides the golf, right? I said, wow, they got 3 tennis courts in there. So I stopped playing tennis. Yeah. So this is when I came home. Yeah, that's in 2005. That's when I got released, yes. Then that's how I met Moy. I'm Mike Moy, yeah. But basically, I don't know what to say. There's so much to say.
You're doing great, Peter.
Yeah, in one day I couldn't even talk about my whole life. It's too much. It's just too much, yeah. But thank you for you guys coming here. I appreciate that, all right?
Thank you.
I'm going to hand this back to her. Thank you.
Thank you for just the brief overview, and we're going to delve into some of the stories that you've mentioned so far. So for the both of you, and you've kind of explained this already, but let's just talk about Chinatown when you were kids, when you were young kids. What kind of pressures and challenges? I know that there were a lot personally that you guys faced, but for Chinese Americans, what kind of pressures and challenges were in Chinatown?
Well, the truth is, when I go to school, we are minority, so we always get picked on from the Spanish, from the blacks, and because our last names sound a little funny to them, and so they make a lot of these different sounds, like just drop a pan on the floor and that's the last name, something like that. So I get a lot of that, and then that's how before my time, that's how the gang started. They form together, they get together, so they don't get picked on, and then they start to fight with them. The Spanish. They used to have a group called the Road Runner, if you remember. I don't know if this is too young for you.
Yeah, that was way back.
Yeah, they called it Road Runner. They called them Road Runner. So we took them out. So yeah.
Was that kind of the bullying that you were describing, Mike?
That came later on, but during those days in Chinatown, the gangs ran everything. The residents were very fearful of the gangs, and even now to this day, the people my age, you only hear whispers about the gangs. They think that they're still active, and that's why you're not going to get the real story out from the residents of Chinatown. And the people who are in their 30s and 40s, and they hear their parents talking about it, their grandparents talking, but they don't get the full story. That's what kind of grip that the gangs had over Chinatown during that era, and people who lived in Chinatown can attest to that.
So, Peter, you joined the Ghost Shadows at 13 years old. What just drew you to the gang? What was that initiation process like?
Well, what drew me again? It didn't drew me again because I created an enemy. When I went to school, I was in school back then, right? But it wasn't long, like maybe 2-3 years, and then one of my school friend got beat up because, like I said, back then, the most dominant crew was the Black and White Eagle. They came down, and they were trying to recruit me. I just, no, I can't. I don't want to be, I don't want to be out there. I just want to help my mother, because my mother worked hard in the factory and stuff like that. But I told them I don't have the time. I don't have the time to hang around with you guys. So one day they didn't see me. They asked my friend, my classmate, and he says he doesn't know where I'm at. They beat him up so bad. They black and blue. Busted lip and everything. So when I came back later on, and I found him, I said, "What happened?" He said, "Well, they came look for you, and but I wasn't hanging around with them. So they just asked him where I was, and then they used that excuse and then beat him up really bad." So I said, "Do you want revenge?" But when I asked him that, it dawned on me, revenge. How am I gonna get revenge? I don't know nobody back then, right? So, and I realized I had a sister who was talking to somebody, and it looked like he looked different from other people. Like, he dressed different. He dressed like a gangster, but I didn't know what a gangster like, So I said, maybe I knew somebody. So I went and I asked the guy. His name is Spirit, and actually he took me under his wing. He's my boss actually. So he's dead now anyway. But he said, "Pete, do you know?" So I told him the story. And at the same time, they was having a war with Black and White Eagle, right? So the Ghost Shadow was nobody then. It didn't have the name doesn't even come up a lot. So I didn't know. So I asked him, and he says, so now it's good that, might as well. I asked him, you have two guns, and then he gave it to me, and then one to me and one to my friend. He said, "Pete, have you ever shot a gun?" I said, "I have never seen a gun before." What you talking about? She's shooting a gun, right? This is how you do it. Click, 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 right? So, okay. So I told my friend, I said, "Okay." In the middle of the way, I still asked him, "Do you still want revenge?" He said, "Yeah, okay." All right, so we go. So as soon as I saw them, they saw us. We was firing back at each other, and we left. Now, hey, we created an enemy. So now, I'll make the long story short. And at the end, I told him where to wait for me, and then I got to hand back the Usu gun to Spirit. So we took it out, and then his 2 bullets was there. Oh, my heart sank. So I said, I even forgot his name now. I don't want to remember. I said, listen, you could have told me this. Now, not just me, you created an enemy for yourself, you know? Where you gonna go now? Don't think about you going to school now. You'll be buried in a minute. Yeah? So I would decide what I had to do, you know? So I just, so I went on the street life. I created an enemy over there, so from there on, yeah.
Mike, what about you? What circumstances led you to join the Fuk Ching gang?
As I said before, bullying.
Yeah.
And I was bullied, and it was, what choices did I have? A lot of victims of bullying, they either turn to drugs, alcohol, suicide, they just go into school and shoot them up or whatever. But at that time, New York City was gangster city. There was gangs everywhere, and they were doing recruiting. And it just happened to be, there was a kid doing recruiting, and I happened to get sucked into that life.
Was there any type of initiation process there?
Yeah, I was also attracted to that life because I see how, these guys carry themselves, and, at that time, I want to be like them, instead of being the prey. So, was there an initiation process? I didn't get initiated until later on, until they trusted me.
Okay.
Yeah, so that was about probably a couple of years later, was it? I forgot the exact year, but it's in my book. It's in my book. What the initiation process was like. Yeah. In the beginning, I was more like an associate. I was hanging around with them, doing things with them until I gained their trust, and then that's when they requested me to go have a meeting. I didn't know what the meeting was about, and then they initiated me.
All right. Peter, your book mentions becoming a godson to a high-ranking member of the Genovese crime family. Tell us about that relationship. How did that relationship develop?
Okay, by then, in the 80s, I owned a club in Times Square, about on 46th Street and 7th Avenue, yeah. And it was a big club. It was a ballroom club. It was inside a hotel. I owned that solely myself. So one day, I walked in there. I saw like 4 or 5 Chinese guys was like talking really loud to this old man. Like at that age, I was only like 20 something. He's like 40 years older than me. He was like 60, right? So then I don't know those younger guys, the Chinese guy. So they was talking really loud to him. So I walk over to them. I said, listen to me. I was thinking about this. I didn't know he was a mob guy. So I said, why you pick on this old man for? You get out of here, go, right? And one of them tried to oppose, like step up front, and the other one pulled him back, say something, and then they left. So he gave me a card. His name is Nick. Yeah, Nick gave me a card. So Pete, when you have time, you can, whenever you have time. No, first he said, let me buy you a drink. I said, Nick, you don't need to buy me a drink. I own this place. You drink all you want. Mm-hmm. So we became friends. Mm-hmm. Yeah, we became. Then later on, I realized that he went with the mob family. Yeah. And then that's how I met him. Yeah. And we became close and really close. In the book, yeah, I did some business with him. One time he gave me like $2 million. Right? What he does is, that day I realized later on was about the difference of loaning money to those 4 guys. And, something to do with money.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. He charged like a 2% back then, the Italian people. I charged 10%. So it's a lot different.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I offered him, a lot more, but he didn't want it. Yeah. But at the end of the day, when I came home, he said, all the friends you said you had, your godfather is the best one. That he came every week. What he promised you, he said, when you go to prison, he told me, when you go, just go, don't worry about it. I said, yeah, okay. So I look after the family. And he kept his word till the day he passed. He couldn't walk no more. That when he had cancer. Yeah, he couldn't come by no more. He always on time, whatever he says. Well, my son was only like 10 years old. Gave him $200 every week. Come to see him every week, every Saturday. Man, I'm very grateful of him. Yeah, really grateful of him. Yeah.
How did your families react while you were, in these gangs? What was their reaction to what you were doing?
Oh, of course they worry.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Especially the mother and father, they would never believe a son would, like that. You know what I'm saying? That bad. they would never. No, that's not my son.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What about you, Mike?
Same here. They were worried, and that's how me and my parents basically, especially my father, we severed ties because of that. They,
Right.
They basically followed me wherever I went, and they tried to, see where I went. Because here's the difference with the Chinese gangs and the other gangs and the other ethnic groups. The Chinese gangs, the Dailo would get an apartment for us, and we would basically, all of us would stay in one apartment. Sometimes there could be 10, 15 of us living together in one apartment. Whereas the young street kids and the blacks and Hispanics, they go home to their parents. But we live together in an apartment that our Dailo secure for us. So we're there, we're living with each other, and we form a closer bond, so to speak. And it is like a sense of brotherhood, loyalty, and respect, and that's why it's like Peter said, what his godfather did for him, right? When he was in prison, he went to visit his family every week until the day he died. He's a criminal, but he has these qualities of loyalty, honor, respect. If he wasn't a criminal and you carry that into the private sector or corporate world, that's someone you want by your side. So we can't demonize, these criminals. If they didn't take that route, who knows what they could have become. Yeah.
So, Peter, you rose through the ranks really to become one of the most powerful men in Chinatown. I want to delve a little bit more into what you were actually doing. So what were your responsibilities? What did your day-to-day life look like?
Oh, see how the mob at the time, the money goes up from the bottom and up, right? With the Chinese, it's from the up to go down to the bottom. Yeah, it's totally different. Yeah, we had to make sure they well off. We could. Money doesn't hand from the bottom and up. In other words, so the whole responsibility is to me back then. Well, I started off with forget about. First, we had Nicky Louie. He's the boss. There was 5 of us, right? And they call the 5 general. We actually helped them to got to where he was. 5 of us. But one day that we broke off with him. 5 of us broke off with him, and we don't want to go about his way of doing things, like the communist way. Let's put it this way. We want to go in the more democratic way. So 5 of us take vote. Like the commission, how the mob man commission, they take vote. So just not by one person say so. This is what I do, and that's it, and no more. Right? So, but at the end of the day, it left me only one behind. There's 2 of them was doing time, 16 years in Baltimore, and one was on the run, and one later on formed another group called the White Tiger, right? And so it left me by myself. At that time, I was only like 22, 23 years old. And many nights, I was sitting on my bed and thinking, will I be able to, to handle this? Will I be able to carry this torch? And being that, after I left home, that became my family. They're all like my brothers, like older brother, younger brother. How I got my name was that Kid. My nickname is Kid, right? I was the youngest one in the crew back then. Out of all even the 5 general, I was the youngest one. I was the youngest kid in the whole crew back then. So they gave me the name of Kid, right? Not barely the kid, but the kid. So I didn't have a choice then. I had to carry the torch, and then whatever comes at me, and then I just kind of handle the way. Well, I think it's the best way for me to handle. Yeah.
Yeah. What specifically, like, was your gang doing on the streets?
Oh, we was protecting all the gambling house. That's number one.
Okay.
So, because that's the main source of income that we got coming in. The gambling houses that they used to, every gambling house used to bring up $10,000 a week. There's about 11 of them. So we got 110,000 a week.
Oh.
Yeah, for us, right? I remember one of my lawyers was saying that one time, said, you know, Pete, you guys could buy a McDonald's franchise in every 2 months.
Wow.
It was $160,000, if you guys remember back then. $160,000 for that franchise. That was $2 million, right? Or over $2 million. But I was thinking, what? I was young and naive, you know. Like I said, I don't have no education. What the hell we gonna flip hamburger for, right? Now we it don't make sense. We're holding guns. We gonna flip hamburger? No, we're not gonna do no that. I was young and stupid.
Yeah.
Young and stupid, I could say.
Mike, what did you hear about Pete? I'm sure you heard about him in the streets. What did you hear about him?
What did I hear about? He's
They
a
call me the
legend.
Bugsy.
He's
Bugsy?
Yeah, just yesterday.
Yeah, he's the Bugsy of Chinatown. Let's put it that way.
You see? Him and James and them. Yeah, James right there. They call me the Bugsy.
Yeah. You know what? I could tell you that he was. His name was known. He was feared. Yeah. And me knowing what the life was like back then, you know, even as a gangster, and then I crossed over being a police officer, and I see there's only a handful of people in a gang. Okay, you can have a gang of 20, 30, 50, 80 people. It's just a handful of shooters out there. You know, just a handful. A very small fraction, you know, the people who do things. And we know he's one of those guys. And even Nicky Louie, who's his Dilo, when I asked Nicky Louie, how do you describe, when I did an interview with him about a year, 2 years ago, and I asked him, looking back, how would you describe Kitsai? And he said 2 words: unpredictable and ruthless. So that's how his own boss described him. And that was back then, you know, but now he's a changed man.
I feel very
I'm not
comfortable.
at heart a gangster, okay? I'm so nervous right now.
It's all right. You're right. Mike,
You give him a gun, yeah, but you give him a microphone, he'll be
Like I
shaking.
told him, as a joke, you give me a gun, I don't know what to do. You give me a mic, I just completely don't know what to do.
Mike, you mentioned in your book that you saw, friends of yours that were sent to prison, even killed. I want to get to the turning point here. How did those losses affect you at the time?
It's seared in my memory. Like I remember this one kid. He's a really nice kid. I mean, if you look at him back in those days, he dressed like a gangster, talked like a gangster, act like a gangster. He's like, you could see, like, he's gangster. But then he doesn't have the heart of a gangster, you know. He's just a overall nice guy, you know. And I told him, I said, and he was a new recruit, you know. I brought him in and we hung out together. But I even told him, I said, yeah, have fun, hang out with us. You're an associate, just hang out and just have fun. But this life is not for you, I told him. And I told him, I said, you just don't have it in you for the streets, you know? I mean, you have a nice family, you know, but he just was attracted to that lifestyle. And eventually, he left our gang and joined the Dong'an gang. And because he said, Mike, there's really no money to be made with the Fuk Ching, and the Dong'an has a lot of different rackets. You know, one thing about the gang that I was in, the crew that I was in, we didn't deal with drugs. And I'll tell you about that later. I mean, hard drugs, like heroin. And he crossed over because of money. You know, he grew up poor, you know, and he crossed over to the Dong'an gang because of money. And I bumped into him later on, and he was wearing all types of expensive jewelry, and he was making money through drugs. I said, the drug trade is a dangerous game. It's really not for you. You don't have it in you. And eventually he got killed, and he made the paper. When I read about it in the papers, and my heart sank. And I had another friend who got stabbed, and I watched him bleeding out in front of me. And it's just memories that stick to you, throughout your life, and just things that you can't forget. One thing about my crew, all right, is that the Dailo that initiated me, he was involved in the gambling rackets. Like, he was making a lot of money through the gambling houses that he opened up all over Chinatown. And he knew that dealing in heroin is going to attract a lot of enforcement, especially the FBI. So our crew, he protected our crew from dealing in heroin. So one day, my Dailo, the guy at the top, called him in for a meeting, and he went in, and there was a couple of bricks of heroin on the table that he asked him to move it for him. And his answer to his Dailo was, with all due respect, if you ask me to go kill somebody, I'll do it for you right now. But please don't ask me to move this stuff for you, because this stuff will kill a lot of innocent people out there. It's going to affect a lot of families. And because he was okay with that answer, it protected our crew from dealing in heroin. And that's why we were under the radar with the FBI in that sense. Because the Flying Dragons were dealing with heroin a lot. Onion Head, Machine Gun Johnny Yang, they call him Machine Gun Johnny. And then the Dongwon were dealing with heroin. And the Fuk Ching didn't really deal with heroin too much. Maybe a couple bricks here and there, but it wasn't our crew. We had different factions in the Fuk Ching. Yeah.
Now, Pete, you talked a little bit about this before, but this indictment under RICO, it was along with 25 other Ghost Shadow members. Yeah. Did you see that coming? Kind of take us back to that time.
Yeah, I did. I took two of my interpreters with me, and I saw the top three lawyers in New York City, like Steve Colton, all the James LaRosa. Those are guys actually fought a few cases of RICO. RICO is really very, 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 it wasn't new. It's enacted in 1970. After I went to prison, then I learned a lot about RICO. Yeah. So when they first busted it in and arrested me, you charged with the United States Code RICO. RICO? I don't know RICO. Who the hell is RICO? I thought Spanish guy, Rico Hernandez. I know a guy named Rico Hernandez. I remember him in school or something, right? Rico Hernandez. No, I don't know. I never did nothing with RICO. So, but anyway, they locked me up, and then they charged me with that statute, and then when I went inside, and I learned a lot about RICO, of that charge, I know it back of my head. And I'm a lawyer nowadays, yeah. So before I do that, I didn't know how to speak English too well. So a guy named Ching, Melvin Jones, he teaches in education, and he takes so much pride in teaching people, Spanish people, to get a GED in there. Yeah. So when you go in there, you have to have either you have a GED, then you don't have to go to school, or not. You have to attend that education classes for 90 days, then they'll let you out, right? So I was thinking, I got 35 years, I got plenty of time. Why I wanted that GED for? Well, it's not going to help me, right? So I slept there for a long time. Then Jing came over to me. Jing said, "Listen, why don't you, then I'll watch him. Sometime when I got up and then I looked at him, and he teaches, wow, this guy makes sense, huh? Oh man, there's nobody could argue with him in English. His English was perfect. He could tell, he says, okay, there's officers that works in education, but they don't teach, in federal prison. They just sit there to make sure that you don't escape. That's what it is. Yeah. So inmate do the teaching, and the way he teaches, right? And he always take pride. Oh, Pete, this term, I got 30 Mexican, 28 of them graduate from, got the GED. I really take very proud of him. Right? Then I watch him, and or testimony, Ching, you could tell me anything you want, because I don't know English, right? You could say anything you want, you're right. But at the end of the day, he told the officer that works there, like he could go home. He said, bring this to the University of Indiana, and don't ask nobody except the professor who majored in English, and ask him, is this sentence right? Because inside there's a lot of inmates that some of them they hustle, and some of them do have heart that wants to help inmate, and they was defining this law, like it's one of them issue in the RICO, and five of them have different opinion. This one said this one said that. Then Ching came along and says, no, you're all wrong. So, and he defined the whole sentence and gave it to the officer. Said, when you go home, when you bring it to the University of Indiana, ask the professor, and it major in English. See, did I define it right? Then he brought it back and said, absolutely 100% right. So his English is very, time after time, right? And one time he read something in my indictment, and the government wrote about me. And he walked back and forth at night, right? He was trying to see my case. He said, wow, your case, the government actually wrote a book about you, not an indictment. He said, look how thick is it, right? And they said, something I couldn't remember. Like Shakespeare say something like the better part of valor or something like that. He said a sentence like that, right? Then being that I'm very uneducated, so what's the matter? What's the difference? It's not going to help me get out of prison. Then he said, no. If he's educated, this person she should have quote that is not from her mouth, from somebody's mouth, right? So does it make any? No, you just don't know. Like he's very into English, right? So and then later on, he did find that book, Shakespeare. I know where it is. Shakespeare. Whoever went to college, they've been to college, they read this book, right? And they brought it to my eye. And the same thing that what she wrote. I said, oh wow, this guy, huh? But he had no way of getting it, so he had to tell the officer that works there in education, go find this book for me, Shakespeare. Yeah. And prove it to me. Yeah. He taught me a lot of English. Yeah. And then that's how I started.
You were charged and you were sentenced, and you spent 20 years.
20 years, 6 months. Yeah. Straight,
in prison.
Yeah.
What was that experience like for so long, and then being released? Like for you?
At the very beginning, of course, when I was going to the trial, during the trial time, I met a lot of the five commission guys, all the mafia was indicted, the Hell's Angel, back then it was the Reagan administration that went on war against organized crime. So I met everybody, the Hell's Angel, everybody was in there, right? So, but, back then it was, that's the hardest part when we go into trial, like we started going to the hearing, going for suppressed emotions and stuff like that. Those are the hardest times. Besides that, my 20 years is like flying color. Not that I want to be back in there, but
Right.
Yeah, so. But it's a lot of story. It's very comical when I was inside. The people wouldn't believe it's another world inside,
Yeah. Mike.
He didn't believe it because he's not, he's different,
Yeah.
He's not in my side of the world. Yeah.
Now, Mike, you write about there was an officer, an NYPD officer named Stephen McDonald, his story of forgiveness toward a young man who shot him as a turning point in your life. Can you elaborate a little bit more on how that story affected you?
Yes, Stephen McDonald, he was a uniform officer who was on duty at the time, back in the late 80s, and he was shot by a teen and left as a quadriplegic. And I followed his story in the newspaper because back then I always read the newspaper to see what's going on in Chinatown, because a lot of times when the article comes out, most of the time I know those guys, that made the papers. So I've been that story somehow caught my attention. In the beginning, I didn't think anything of it. Oh, okay, just another cop shot. And then as I followed his case, and when his case made it to court and everything, and there's one thing that was mentioned in the newspaper that caught my attention. He forgave the kid who shot him. And I'm thinking, like, how can you forgive somebody? Somebody that's not part of my world. It wasn't part of my mindset. And there was something in the papers that was quoted by Stephen McDonald, saying that the kid was a product of his environment. And I never heard that term before. I was a young kid. I never heard that term. And I dissected every word, and I'm thinking, am I a product of my environment? So I was thinking, and then for him to forgive this person, showed incredible compassion. And I did a lot of self-reflection. And I remember that day I was at home in my living room thinking to myself, like, am I doing, like, what's wrong with me? I mean, I grew up, watching the Shaw Brother Kung Fu movies, and it was all about revenge. And that was my way of thinking. If somebody do me wrong, I'm going to seek my revenge, no matter how long it takes.
The Chinese thinking.
So it was, so that was like my way of thinking. Like, hey, I'll even wait for the kid to come out from prison. And, it's like, that was my way of thinking. So I thought to myself, like, am I wrong? Am I a product of my environment? So, like back then, doing bad, felt good because getting revenge. But then I tried to think, like, doing good could also feel good. So I questioned my mindset, my beliefs, and it was always in the back of my mind. Like, I just need to get out of this environment in order to grow as a person.
Yeah.
And
then you applied to...
Yeah, eventually. It wasn't like a immediate change. It was gradual.
Yep.
Because it was always in the back of my mind how this officer handled that situation, and I always questioned what I'm doing. I knew what I was doing is wrong, but I questioned myself. I had a lot of questions for myself, like, why am I doing this, and how do I get out? And I took the written exam. It was probably around 1990, and they called me around 1993. I still wasn't ready. I had businesses I was running at that time, and I turned it down. And then they called me again in 1995 and say, the list is going to expire. Are you gonna, you're gonna come on, or you're gonna have to take a test again? And that's when I decided to give up everything and join the department, because at that time I had a collectible business, two collectible business, one in Brooklyn Avenue, Chinatown, one on 8th Avenue, Chinatown, and I had one collectible business on East Flatbush and a pool hall. So I was running four different businesses, and prior to that I was running a car service in Sheepshead Bay. So I was running those businesses, and I wasn't ready in 1993 until I decided, you know what, I'm going to give up everything and just join the police department in 1995. June 30th, 1995, that's when I got in.
Were you afraid that your past would be discovered during the screening process or anything like that?
Oh, yes, of course. But on paper, I was a business owner. I own a 6,000 square foot pool hall right in the heart of Flatbush at the junction. And there was a lot of gang activity, drug dealing over there, but they didn't see me as the gangster, the drug dealer, because so many people were coming in and out of the place. It was a 6,000 square feet with 20 pool tables. So they see me as the owner of the location. And right across the street was where I had my collectibles store. And I store a lot of illegal things over there for storage across the street. And then I had the other collectible store in Chinatown, which was a gambling house in the basement. So I had runners taking care of that for me. So on paper,
right,
I was a business owner. And also, back then, I always wore a suit, like a blazer, a suit, dressed like a businessman. After I became a detective wearing a suit and a tie for 17 years, I hate wearing a suit. But back then, when I was younger, okay, let me wear a suit, okay, and this way, stay under the radar with law enforcement, because they tend not to, if you dress like a gangster, they're gonna come up and search you. I got searched plenty of times because my business was in Flatbush. So I have a lot of black friends from West Indian friends who are black, and whenever I go out with them, it's like they see a Chinese guy and a black guy, I get searched. And it's in my book.
Yeah.
It seems like every time I get searched, it's like I'm with the black guy.
I just have to tell you guys, Mike and I had a fascinating conversation backstage, and I asked him if the NYPD knew or ever found out about his past, and he said, I guess they know now. So
yeah, after they see this episode, they'll know.
Mike, while you were patrolling, did you ever encounter any former associates while you were on duty, anything like that?
For
Yes.
a stay, right?
Plenty of times.
For a stay, they threw him down to Chinatown.
Plenty of times I've encountered people I knew from the past. It's also in my book, but I'm going to tell some of the stories here. Whenever I arrest somebody and bring them to central booking, right? Cops hate to wear their hats. I'll tell you that right now. They hate to wear their hats, especially indoors. You're not going to find them. But I always wear my hat because when I'm in uniform, I look totally different. Okay, you got to do a double take, and you probably still won't recognize me when I'm in uniform. And whenever I do the transport to central booking, my heart is always racing because, like I said, my business was right in the heart of the junction, East Flatbush, and a lot of them get arrested, go to central booking, and that's whenever I make an arrest and I transport a prisoner over there, I see 20, 30, sometimes 60 people in the cell, in a couple of different cells, and I'm always afraid to bump into people I know. And there were times when I did, and they looked at me, I looked at them, but it's like they have that familiar, like they see that like, okay, I'm a Chinese cop, it wasn't too many Chinese cops back in the 90s. I think there were only 500 Asians, and there were only like maybe 20 something cops who spoke the language. So they see me as like an oddity, or maybe they see me, they recognize me, but nothing ever came of it. I wore my hat indoors, okay? And the other cops are probably thinking, why is this guy wearing his hat like that and pulling all the way down? So, and also I had other instances when I was working in Chinatown, and I had, former gang members that I knew from other gangs. They dropped money on my lap, to let me know that they're protecting certain places and they want me in. That's another story. If you read in my book, then you're going to see how I handle that situation. Yeah.
Peter, after you were released from prison, how did you start to rebuild your life? What kind of challenges did you face?
I was floating on a boat like for a good 8, 9 months. Yeah. Because one time I was walking home, because I promised my mother before she passed away. She didn't know what she was going to pass away. So that I will go back to where I originally came, like when we landed, right? She was still living in the same apartment, but my father passed away already. So she came and asked me, she said, since your father passed away, why don't you come back and live with me, right? But she, by the time I got home, and she passed away already. So I went back and living by myself. So just to make her wish fulfill, come true, that I lived there for another 90 days, and I just gave up the whole apartment, right? And in Chinatown, when you give the apartment back up, they offer you like 60, 80 grand for just the apartment. It's just renting, because what they do is that as soon as I moved out, they took the apartment, they chopped it in half. They rent it for $2,000 in the front and $2,000 in the back. It's like $4,000. 10 years from now, there's no more Chinese living in Chinatown, New York. Because all those elder people that pass away, they don't want to live there. It's too expensive down there now. It's not like $400 rent, $500 rent no more. It's like in thousands. It's very expensive. Yeah. So I left there. I lived there for until that I complete my mother's wish, and then I left there. I just gave it back to them. I said, no, I don't want the money. Just keep it. It's just too bad a memory for me,
Yeah.
So I got guys coming from behind me, right, walking, and then I saw his hand in the back, right? I just step on the side and see what he reacts. I participated, I'm gonna grab his hand. The day was changed, I said, look at it. Because I got shot in the back, in the head, right? The gun pointed at me, and two bullets, one punctured my lung. Like Mike says, the guy that the detective forgive him, I forgave this guy. After he shot me, he never came back. He wasn't in New York no more. His boss came and talked to me. Will you forgive him? And I told him, yeah, I'll forgive him. Just have him in there, we'll be in the Grand Hyatt in 42nd Street Hotel, and have him say sorry to me in front of me, and I'll forgive him. You know what? I forgive him. Within 30 days, he got killed. Wasn't for me now. Listen, okay? Don't get that mistake. When they had a big war with another gang, right? They shot him up. That day was 3 died and eight got injured. It was a big thing on the paper, a big article. So they knew it wasn't for me, but I got well, how you say it? I got pinched with a lot of things that I never did too, Yeah. But so this one they can't blame on me. So I forgave him and wind up. A lot of time I was thinking, should I not let him come back to the state? Maybe he's still alive. I don't know. But once I told his boss, he could come back. And he came back and in front of me and apologized. I said, okay, forget it. He said, that's it? I said, yeah, that's it. I don't want nothing for you. And then he got shot down within 90 days. Less than that, I think. Yeah.
That was the Golden Star Bar shooting.
Yeah, that's a big thing. The Golden Star Bar.
I think 8 wounded and 3 died in that shooting.
And he's the first one died.
On East Broadway, right across the street from where I lived.
Okay.
Yeah.
So when you got out of prison?
Yeah, so I was still from the society change, right?
Yeah.
So first thing I did was that I took a yellow cab, take me on to 100th Street, Manhattan, right? And stupid me, I was wearing a shoe, right? I was walking from 100th Street all the way to Chinatown. That took me like 4.5 hours. Wow. Just amazed how everything changed, Yeah. So, and a lot of things that I am not used to is like guys have no manner. Like one day, for instance, I told him about this incident is that I was walking in Queens. I was going to a restaurant, a Chinese restaurant. It was drizzle, right? And I saw a pregnant woman. She's like about 8 months or 7 months big, right? Pretty big. So with a daughter like 7 years old, I wind up being at the door first. So I'll wait for her. So I opened the door. So she's about almost got in, and another Chinese guy just bumped by her and went right into the restaurant and sat down. I was so pissed. Okay. So I let the lady walk in. So I walk behind her. I go searching for this guy. Now this, when I came home, I found it. I said, you, come here. Then he speak a different dialect. Well, now the society changed. Now, years ago, they used to speak Cantonese, right? A lot. But now they speak Mandarin. So with Mandarin, I'm very limited. He said, me? Yeah. I said, you, come here. So I took him back outside. I still dribble. I said, do I look like a doorman to you? Do I work for you? No. I closed the door behind him. I walked back in there. That was it. No, I'm not used to those I like underdog, in other words, right? Yeah, I love one day I was walking in Brooklyn and I saw kids in the teens back then, American kids, right? They had skateboard, they got roller skate, and I didn't see an old lady was right in the middle of them. They were talking loud, blah blah blah. By the time I walked almost to the corner of the street, then I realized. They were even making loud noise, so I turned back. I saw an old lady was sitting by the corner of the sidewalk, and her feet was on the street, right? Then I screamed at her, yo! They were like 16, 17, I'm 40-some, 50 years old. So I chased after them, right? So I couldn't run after them. So one guy left a skateboard. I took that skateboard and went after them. Right? I couldn't catch up with them. I said, over there. So I went back and picked the lady up. That was it.
Yeah.
I love them. That's where I came from, you know,
Yeah.
underdog. So, yeah.
So, you know, obviously, you've written your books now. Peter Chin's book is currently out, and then Mike Moy, your book is coming out relatively soon. Now that you know everyone will be able to read. I know that there's a lot in the works, but let's start with you, Pete. What are some of your future plans or hopes?
My future plan and hope? Well, I hope that I could contribute to the society, yeah, to do something better for, you know, things that I could do for other people. And it makes me happy, yeah. If something that I could do something for somebody, I'm happy, yeah. I feel very happy that I did something, yeah. Nothing more, yeah.
Mike, what about you?
Me, I just take it day by day, you know, whatever. My mission in 2015 was to get this book published, whether it's self-published or traditionally published, and I've made my goal. So I'm happy, I'm content now. Once my book comes out, I've already achieved my goal. And I guess my next step is take a step back and take it easy. I've been working 10 years on this. Take a step back and...
He dragged me into this. I didn't want to. I didn't want 17 years passed. Then he came.
Yeah.
They offered me 17 years before. I didn't want it. I really don't want it.
Any interest in, I don't know, a movie or a TV series or anything like that?
Right now, there's things in the works. We're still in the negotiation stage and planning stage. But who knows, until it happens, you know, I guess if it does, you'll definitely hear about it.
Thank you. Thank you both.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
We have just a few minutes before the book signing with Mr. Chin to answer any questions from the audience. And if you have a question, if you can just raise your hand, we'll take like one or two.
Please no.
All right, we'll have this mic come over to you, sir.
I just wanted to know if either of you have started families and children, do they know your story? And how did it affect them from not going where you came from?
Oh, sure, yeah. Of course, yeah. I wouldn't want my family to, when, you know, what I didn't have, I'll try to give it to them, like, you know, love, warmth, family, stuff like that, yeah. I didn't have that when I was growing up, yeah.
Do you have children, Pete?
Yeah, I have one, yeah. He's old, yeah. I had him when I was young, 21.
Oh, wow.
So I'm 65, just imagine that. He's 40-something. He got wings to fly now. You know? Yeah.
My kids were born, I have a daughter and a son. They're born in the 1990s. They have no idea about this life. The only way they're going to find out is to read my book. And
were you already a cop when your children were born?
yeah, I was a cop in 95. My daughter was born in 97, and my son was also born in 1999. So, yeah. And as far as my wife, we were together 31 years. So even before I was a cop, you know,
She know everything.
She-
Some things you don't know.
You know what? I don't advertise it. I don't disclose it. But she's a special type of woman. Okay, she's a special type of woman. Need to know basis. She don't question a lot of things. And I guess in a way, that's why we're together so long. I mean, does she know? She's also a little bit street smart because where she grew up, there were gang activity. So a lot of times, there's a lot of things she don't question me. And
You know, Mike, what the Chinese say, no IC.
also,
You don't want to see it.
a lot of things she's going to find out in the book. You know, she's going to find out in the book.
I just want to say thank you to everyone who came out tonight and to our panelists.
Thank you.
And again, we will be holding a book signing with Peter Chin in the waiting room. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.